Hi everyone, my name is Marnie Jones and I'm the founder of TalentX. This is an audio version of a white paper that I wrote titled 6 Undeniable Hiring Mistakes That Will Kill Your Business. It's based on the highest ever recorded hiring and 12-month retention rate of 75.2%, of which I will explain in more detail shortly. Let's begin. I don't like to be dramatic, but this could be one of the most important white papers you ever read and could spell the difference between you achieving your business goals and bitter disappointment. Although I could go into detail on the pains and costs of hiring, I'm sure as a business leader, you are well aware. 76% of business owners in a survey that we did said that they would aim higher in a business if they could recruit better team members. This white paper is an honest first-time sharing of how we, TalentX, hire for our clients and achieve a hiring success rate of 75.2%. Why listen to me? Being honest, it's very hard to know how TalentX compares objectively to other recruiters or hiring processes. This is because there is no agreed upon consensus of what hiring success is, nor a codified set of data to compare it to. So this is relative to whatever hiring stat that you find. I scour the internet for hiring success stats and the results are messy and consistent. As a side note, if you find or know of any stat on hiring success, please do let me know by emailing info@talentx.com.au. The typical way recruiters are measured is by looking at time to fill, retention rate, cost per hire, and offer acceptance rate. But you could do well in all of these ways and still hire someone terrible. I think all recruiters and hirers should measure their success rate the same way that we do, counting it only when a candidate, number 1, stays 12 months or more, number 2, meets or exceeds role expectations, and number 3, does not cause cultural or interpersonal upsets. We offer flexible replacement guarantees and options, which gives us the confidence in knowing that if the candidate didn't meet the above criteria, the client will use these replacement options. So if these replacement options are not used, the candidate then must be good, so we assume. So we say that 75.2% of the candidates that we place are successful, and when we say that, we mean that they meet that above criteria. So how good is this compared to other recruiters? I have no idea. Despite my attempts, I've never been able to find another recruiter who promotes a success rate, let alone measures it. This means that technically we have the highest hiring success rate in the world, but I cannot know for sure. I've searched industry and global recruitment stats and none of them measure the success of a hire in the above criteria. I would guess that even if they did, it would not be based on 12 months, but more likely based on 3 months anyway. I did see a hiring success rate of 35% in one article, in which case ours would be 2.1 times better, although I do not know how accurate this figure is across the board. What I can say is, number 1, in Australia, it takes an average of 82 days to fill a vacant position. It takes us an average of 40, or 2 times faster. Number 2, average job applicants for a job are 15 per job, and ours average 35 or 2.3 times more. And number 3, only 14% of those hired through job boards stay, yet 75.2% of our placements stay, or 5.3 times more likable to stay. And 97% of the jobs that we place come from job boards. I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve and bearing all that I have to share on what I deem to be successful in an attempt to spearhead an era of recruiter accountability. I'm trying to take as much responsibility for the quality of our candidates as I can, and I would like to see the industry do the same. As a perfectionist, I even take issue with our 75.2% stat, and I wish it were higher. But there are so many factors that go into getting a good hire, and a lot of it is on the employer side as well. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm in the business of minimizing risk and maximizing objective confidence in hiring. This white paper lays out what I have learnt in this process. What is the problem with your hiring approach? At the core of your hiring problem is the fact that you do not have a consistent, agreed upon, objectively workable hiring system. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Have you ever heard a hiring expertise talk or a seminar that offers anything more than basic knowledge on interviewing or urges you to focus on employer branding? There seems to be a workable, repeatable method or approach to just about any other industry or practice except for hiring. I observe only 2 universal consistencies with the way that people hire. Number 1, resumes or CVs exist and are checked. And number 2, interviews are conducted. That's it. And you and I both know that doing these 2 steps provides no guarantee of candidate suitability, culture fit, or performance. Hiring ineffectiveness wreaks havoc on a business. To find out just how much, I surveyed a bunch of business owners, just above 200 of them, and I found that Number 1, 58% of business owners have been burnt by a staff member that they thought was great. And number 2, respondents felt that they could turn over 62% more in revenue if their whole team was close to being as good as their best staff member without increasing staff numbers. Strangely, despite the above, when we asked the same respondents how confident they felt in hiring amazing staff, they rated themselves an average of 7.3 out of 10. So this means that either A, they're not being honest with themselves, or B, they're not aware of the weaknesses of their hiring process. So these stats show us that despite the owner's confidence in their hiring and management abilities, they still struggle with staff and hiring. This problem is so bad and so prevalent that most business owners honestly do not know what to do. They do not think that anything can even be done about it, or they feel that it's just, quote, the nature of hiring. So how do businesses get around this? Well, most businesses build teams using one of these strategies. Common hiring strategies. Number 1, hire and fire until they find the right person. A process you could liken to throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks. Number 2, find the most incredible team member and overpay them to keep them. This is one of the most successful hiring approaches I have seen. Number 3, hire from referrals given by current staff. Although I generally agree that such candidates are usually of higher value, I wouldn't actually classify this as a strategy because it's not something that you can rely on or control. Number 4, people put up with average hires because they feel that if they go back to the drawing board, there's no guarantee that the next person will end up being any better anyway. The 4th strategy is actually the most common, usually with a couple of top performers in the team that hold everyone else together. Sadly, 37% of the business owners I surveyed said that they currently have one or more toxic people in their team. That's almost 40%. They also said that on average, over a quarter of their staff do not have the right personality when it comes to culture, synergy, positivity, and company values. Isn't that horrific? I think that the worst part is even if you personally are naturally good at hiring and are exempt from these stats, there is still a limit to how much hiring you can personally do as you grow. You cannot hire everyone forever. So the need for a consistent, workable system is a top priority for a business leader, probably second most important after sales. Important. As a business leader, to be where you are today, you must have made some good hires. For you to be reading this or listening to this, you must have made some bad ones too. I am myself not immune to hiring mistakes. I only know about them because I've hired many wrong people, and I've seen many of my clients hire the wrong people too. I have trialed and tested all the wrong ways and found the most uniform, effective way to hire across any role in any industry. Most people don't believe me because we're dealing with humans. I know how suspicious my claims sound. I ask for you to park your cynicism for a few moments to see if this white paper resonates with you. The title of this white paper may seem dramatic, hiring mistakes that will kill your business. Well, the quality of the employees that you hire will decide your business's success, your revenue capacity, your team culture, and whether or not your goals get achieved. I believe that these findings are vital for any business, but of course I'll think this. Time for you to decide. 6 undeniable hiring mistakes that will kill your business. Mistake number 1. You use preconceived ideas to hire. I once had a business owner tell me that he would never hire a woman with small dogs because, and I quote, I hired 2 women who had small dogs and both of them were absolutely terrible. The managing director of a design company told me that he must know the background professions of the parents of the candidates because, quote, public servant parents are different to parents with professional backgrounds, and I think that would make a difference. This was a big consideration for him to hire a general manager. Another business owner told me that she hired a GM because her lipstick was really bright and, quote, I thought that meant that she was confident and bold. That general manager ended up being toxic and half destroyed her business. And this, my friend, is the crux of our modern day hiring problem. A preconceived idea is an idea or an opinion formed before having evidence for its truth or usefulness. Preconceived ideas prevent one from seeing what is in front of them. We all use these weird ideas to a smaller or lesser degree. I haven't met a business owner yet that doesn't have one, me included. Here are some of the most common preconceived ideas with hiring. Number 1, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. Number 2, this candidate is too cheap, there must be something wrong with them. Number 3, good staff are expensive. Number 4, they're young, so they don't know what they want. Number 5, good people are hard to find. Number 6, yeah, well, they had a spelling mistake in their resume, so they mustn't be professional enough. Number 7, the more number of years in the role equals a better candidate. Number 8, they said that thing though, remember, in the interview, so they must be good. Number 9, they just didn't really sell themselves to me. Number 10, they were the best presented, so obviously they care more about their job. Number 11, first impressions are the best impressions. Number 12, well, he's similar to Bob, remember, and Bob was hopeless, so let's not hire this person. Number 13, he interviewed way better than her, let's go with him. All of these statements have been said to me, and none of them are determined objectively. We use these ideas because, let's face it, we have little else, to filter candidates, to determine which ones we feel will do better in a role. These ideas come from past successes, failures, and betrayals, yes, but if we don't have a way to differentiate that one person is not another person, then we may as well give up now. The more preconceived ideas you have, the harder it will be to hire great staff. These ideas act like hidden filters and only get worse when you add more people to the hiring decision-making process. We collect these ideas along our business journey and we use them to create some feeble sense of confidence in order to say yes to a candidate that we've spent a total of 90 minutes with. We agree to pay these strangers however much money to do a job that we factually have no idea if they can do. To top it all off, we usually skip the ref checking part because, number 1, why would they give a reference that would say something bad about them? Number 2, we know people lie and we question how much we can accurately find out anyway. And number 3, we don't even want to know if they're terrible because we've just spent weeks trying to find them and we've already gotten this far, and we'd rather risk the high chance that they aren't right for the role than confront the idea of restarting the whole damn hiring process again. Besides, the candidate said that their biggest weakness is their perfectionism, and they did mention that they see themselves here long term, so they really should be good for the role, right? Kill me. You must put aside your preconceived ideas and have an objective way to assess your candidates. Mistake number 2, you write ads like everybody else. Most people do not know how to compel the right candidates to apply for the roles over others, whilst also repelling the non-ideal candidates. Your first intention has to be attracting the right kind of people to your roles who will read your ad and feel as though it was written just for them. On average, our ads get 18% more views in job searches, double the clicks, and 3 times the more applicant starts. There's proof from our Seek Analytics, which I cannot show you in audio. So posting your own job ads are powerful because, number 1, you own the candidates who apply. Number 2, you have the opportunity to attract the perfect person. Number 3, you're getting people who are actually looking versus needing to be poached. And number 4, when you find an ad that works well, this actually becomes your intellectual property and can be used again and again for your key roles. For us, 97% of our jobs close from Seek ads. This includes all roles from graduate and entry level all the way up to C-suite. P.S. We secretly love that most recruiters don't agree, so we can leverage Seek as much as possible. So here's a typical ad structure. About the company. At TalentX, we do blah, and we pride ourselves in la la la. Then you go through the duties. Here are the duties of the role, which is normally listed like a job description, by the way, very extensive and very long. And then there's some comment like, to be successful, you will have, and lists all the skills and experience or personality attributes. And then at the end, it talks about the benefits and the pay of the role. The problem with this structure is that it doesn't speak directly to a high achiever. It's the same as everyone else in the way that everyone else writes ads. It is boring. And with too much focus on benefits, you get self-centered people who are looking for the things that are for them, me. There's no interesting titles that are used, there's weak call to actions, and most likely there's only ever one ad posted in one ad category. You have to know that there seems to be a couple of basic laws that I've discovered to do with ads. Number 1, what you write, you attract. And number 2, in order to really reach out and grab your ideal candidate, you have to write the ad specifically to them. We have 10 ad writing rules that help us attract the best candidates. I don't have the space here to go through them all, but I will give you 2 of them. Top 10 ad writing rules. Number 1, define your necessities versus preferences. In order to really speak to your ideal candidate, you must define your necessities versus preferences. Most of the time, the difference between what you absolutely need and what is only preferred is actually not clearly defined or agreed with everyone in the hiring process. A necessity is something that you will reject the candidate based on in and of itself. A preference is something that you ideally want, which will make you prioritize this candidate over others. As an example, I was hiring an architect for a client. I asked the client what her necessities and preferences are for the role. She said a necessity was that the architect had to have 13 years of experience. She went on to list a few other things about project type, experience, personality, etc. I asked her, okay, so if I give you a candidate who had everything else you wanted, but only had 12 years and 9 months of experience, you wouldn't hire them? And she said, oh, no, I would. And I was like, right, so 13 years is not a necessity, it's a preference. What is the amount of minimum experience you need in years in order to say no to the candidate, even if they had everything else that you wanted? And she replied, 3 years. Well, good, that's your necessity, 3 years. Anything else can be a preference. Now, you may find that most of what you felt was a necessity is actually a preference. That's good. So long as you clear this up, you won't find yourself skipping out on good candidates. Often people then screen too many candidates on these things, get down the track and realize 6 weeks ago, oh, that candidate was actually really good. Now that I've interviewed everyone else, they just didn't have this one thing that we agreed was actually a preference, not a necessity. So once you've defined your necessities and preferences, you can now define what is called a candidate archetype. A candidate archetype is the type of person who could fit the role and match your necessities. So for example, a candidate archetype could be someone who has done the job before, the exact same role that you want in another company. It could be someone who has a proven track record of performance, who's looking to move up into this role. So maybe a more junior person who this would be a promotion for. It could be a graduate or entry-level person that you're willing to train, so long as that they're great in every other way. Or it could be something like a mum returning to the workforce who is looking for the perfect role or a part-time job. So all roles have at least one archetype, your ideal candidate. But when you have different archetypes, you then write ads per archetype. So we suggest having at least 2 archetypes defined for every role and 2 ads written, one for each archetype. If you write an ad that lists all types of people who could do the job or lists too many preferences, it won't really resonate with your ideal candidate. It's like changing your ads from being a shotgun broad approach to a laser-focused sniper approach to really stand out. In every single hiring project we've done, at least one candidate tells us that when they read the ad, they felt it was written for them. This is what you want. The more a candidate feels this way, the more likely they are to tolerate longer hiring processes, be willing to negotiate pay, and be more excited than a different normal candidate. Here are some real statements from candidates regarding our ads. I was browsing and saw this role and looked up the company, and I had a really good feeling about it. I have a lot of experience, and the description of the ad described me, and it sounded like it was written for me. Tenacious, methodical, that's me. Another one. I have never seen a job ad like this one. So much spirit. It's very different from what you normally read. There is a strong challenge in here. I needed to learn more. Another one. The ad just really stepped out and whacked me straight in the forehead. Well done. This creates a great start to the hiring process for the candidate. It also directly reflects your brand as an employer. We have even had ads go semi-viral within candidate communities. For example, a CFO ad that we did was sent around to multiple CFOs by each other. And we even had someone on 600 grand per year pay apply for this job, which was only 150 grand per year because, quote, I have never seen an ad like this. I just had to apply. What might this do for your employer brand? We hired a GM for a client in the medical industry. This role had 2 archetypes. The first archetype was someone who'd done the role before, was in the medical industry, but wanted a new challenge. The second archetype was someone who came from the construction industry, as this was similar in nature, but who wanted to get out of the industry. As for how each of these performed, it was really interesting. So the first archetype, someone who's in the industry who just wants a new challenge, we ranged in the normal applicants. So normal applicants for this type of role were between 11 and 39, and we got 38. In the second archetype, which is someone who came from construction industry but wants to get out, we had 46 applicants, and high was considered anything more than 39. Do you see how different the ad for archetype 2 must have been? How much it must have stood out? This was the job ad title we used. Get out of construction, general manager for medical devices company. How many job ads have you seen with a title like this? As stated before, I cannot go through all of the 10 ad writing rules here. I have space only to go into detail on 2 of them. These rules prompt you on how to transform your ads from meh to magnetic. If you'd like to see these 2GM ads as we've posted them exactly, then you can go to a specific link that I'll put in the description of this audio, and you can get those 2 ads for free. In summary, you have to have faith in ads. People disregard them too much and they lose out. Writing ads in reality is how you make someone want to work for you. I invite you to view it like this, not only as a thing that gets slapped up and then complained about because nothing comes from it. Ads make the world of difference, and it's one of the largest contributing factors to our hiring success. Please treat them as so. Mistake number 3. You use the wrong yardsticks to measure candidate worth. 78% of people lie during the hiring process. How do we know, as much as we possibly can, how good a candidate is at their job before you hire them? There is a special interviewing technique that we use to do this, and the questions are different to what questions are normally asked. In fact, I Googled the best questions to ask when interviewing, and these are exactly what I show you should not ask. Questions like, what skills and strengths can you bring to this position? Can you tell me about your current job? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Do you work best alone or in a team? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's one fact that's not on your LinkedIn profile or resume? If I give you $1 million, what would you do with it? If you're an animal, which one would you want to be? We use these as examples of exactly what not to ask. Why? None of these questions determine a candidate's true value. When you think about it, you could get very impressive answers to any of these questions, but the candidate could still be not good at their job or even be toxic to a team. What you want to do is ask questions that determine the outcome and achievements the candidate has had in previous roles. Let's use the example of a soccer team. You're hiring a striker. Which is more valuable to ask a striker? Questions like, how many games have you played? How many rules do you know? Have you played in X country before? What kind of training have you done? You could get really impressive answers to these questions. Instead, you should be asking questions like, how many goals did you score last season? How many goals did you score in the season before that? How many goals did you score in comparison to other players? A candidate could have played 1,000 games and scored nothing. They could have had countless hours of training, but pale in comparison to other players. Of course, we want to know knowledge and experience, but this is a secondary requirement. The first thing that you must determine is, are they able to create valuable results? If the answer is no, who cares how much knowledge or experience they have? Stop using knowledge and experience as a yardstick. It's time for you to focus on an outcome, and results, and step away from the preconceived idea that number of years in a role, previous titles, etc. equal incredible candidates. In fact, if you focus more on things like that, including first impression, knowledge, experience, titles, you end up getting super charming candidates who know exactly what to say and who are looking for the highest pay bracket. So this requires you to use a very different and very specific line of questioning. This interviewing technique is called the Performance Analysis Questionnaire, or PAQ for short. Performance Analysis Questionnaire. The purpose of the PAQ is to determine exactly how much of an achiever the candidate is. If you have an achiever or an overachiever, you have a candidate who is more likely to perform well in your company as well. If you hire an underachiever, what's the likelihood that they'll do well in your business? There are actually 27 specific questions in the PAQ that will help you determine how much of an achiever they are. The answers to these allow you to score them out of 10 on our achiever scale. So we have a scale from A grade overachiever, dream team member at the top, to destructive team member at the bottom. And the scale goes like this. At 10, at a score of 10, this is like an A grade overachiever. This is the person that pretty much overachieves any and all targets or expectations. You then go to a 9. A 9 is an overachiever. They overachieve most deadlines or expectations. An 8 is an achiever. An 8 is someone who achieves what they're tasked with. A 7 is a semi-underachiever. They achieve sometimes, but mostly just under what was expected. A 6 is an underachiever. They do not achieve their expectations at all. And a 5 or below is like a non-achiever. They achieve little to nothing. In fact, they might even claim others' achievements as if their own. They hide their non-achievement and they prevent others from achieving. A score of 8 is given to a candidate who has achieved what they were tasked with. Even having a team of 8s is going to be a good team. You're looking for 8.5 to 9.5 scored candidates, those who go above and beyond and have proven to overcome barriers to achieve outcomes and value for a business. 10s are super rare. In fact, most business owners are 10s. The Performance Analysis Questionnaire, or the PAC, is an interviewing technique with a series of questions that determine what were they tasked with versus what did they achieve in their previous roles or their current role, what value was added to previous companies in quantity, volume, amount, how they compared to other team members, whether they were taking on more responsibility at the end of their role than at the start, whether they overcame barriers to achieve the outcomes of their role. The beauty is that this technique can be applied to any role, whether it's a receptionist or a CEO, and we interview every single one of our candidates in this way. I'm going to give you an example of a summary PAC answers that show clearly that this person is a 10 out of 10 overachiever. For example, this person claimed, by the way, I want to make a note here, this is all claims. We'll get to how you verify this later. So we asked them what they achieved, and these are some of the achievements that he listed. I doubled the student numbers in my role since August. We had 2,000 in our centres and we have 4,000 now. My target was to increase by 25% and I beat this 5 times over. Our Instagram and Facebook has tripled. That was not a part of my JD. I streamlined processes and it saves about 5 days of work each week amongst the team. I changed the structure of our centres. I hired admin people that are cheaper, and that was not in my JD but saved about 30% in wages. So clearly this person goes above and beyond and brings a lot more value than what he was paid for. Now, this candidate didn't volunteer this information. We had to ask the right PAC questions in order to draw it out of him. Why? Because no one interviews like this. So candidates are never prepared for it. Candidates are used to being judged on their resume, appearance, and first impression and talking about their, quote, experience. So we have to dig and dig and dig to find the true value and worth that they brought in their last role. If the candidate says that they implemented a process that improved efficiency, for example, we don't just stop there, we dig deeper. How many hours roughly does it save you and the team? What is the average wage of your team? Okay, so let's times the hours saved by the average wage, and then we'll have X value brought to the business or saved. Is this correct? Almost anything can be quantified. When an overachiever gets questioned like this, they love it. They feel seen, they feel heard, and very often these candidates state that they've never been interviewed like this in their life and that their current employers haven't validated them. Being good at doing PACs is a vital step of the hiring process and cannot be skipped. The good thing is that this doesn't need to take longer than 20 minutes, so it doesn't actually blow out the hiring process. It also works the same for entry level as it does for a CEO. When you think about it, how can you make an informed decision on whether or not you want a candidate if you haven't got this kind of information about them? Especially the bigger the role, the more important the role, the more important it is that you do this. So it's too much to list all the PAC questions here, but if you want to download your own free PAC interview template, you can click the link in the description. Mistake number 4, you don't use a tell-all personality profile. There are a couple more yardsticks that I urge you to stop using to determine a candidate's value. Stop using their personality and their charisma, how they made you feel in the interview, how enthusiastic they were, and stop using first impressions and appearances. These end up being preconceived ideas. How many times has someone's personality fooled you? Where you have had a team member who seems incredible, who slowly or quickly ate at your team from the inside. Or even reversely, where you had a team member who you thought wouldn't work out, who ended up being actually incredible. Simply put, the personality shown in the interview cannot be trusted. Interviews and dates are where you'll see someone's best mask. They show you what they want you to see, and it's one of the biggest hiring challenges. It's interesting to note that performance and personality are 2 very different things. Have you ever met the most lovely, wonderful person, but they couldn't perform in their duties and it was so horrible firing them because you really liked them and so did everyone else, but they were just terrible at their job? Or have you had someone who was a super high overachiever who achieved every target given to them, but the whole team didn't like, or they rubbed everyone the wrong way? This is because personality and performance are separate and they must be seen as separate. We assume that when someone is lovely, they'll be a top performer. We assume that when someone is a top performer, they'll be lovely, but this is unfortunately not the case. That is why this step of the hiring process is so vital. You must know what their underneath personality is. So how does one get around this? How do you know who they are before you hire them? You need a super accurate and telling personality profile. Now, the problem with most personality profiles is they show you sides of their personality, quite accurately, I'll admit, but they often don't show you what is underneath the social mask. The Talent X personality profile looks past anyone's outward personality. It's about 89% accurate. So when we do evaluations with people and we go through all the points, probably every 1 in 10, they're like, that doesn't sound like me, but the rest is pretty spot on, which I feel is quite high in order to assess the true side of someone. So it breaks down a personality into 3 core parts. Their exterior personality, what they show the world, what you see in an interview. Still important to know because this needs to match with the role. If you have a customer service role, for example, then they'd have to have a really strong exterior personality. It shows you how their natural approach is to work. So this is how they view work or how likely they are to be hardworking in terms of effort, handling pressure with or without enforcement, that kind of thing. And more importantly, their interior personality. So this is how they really feel about themselves, the world, and the traits that make your life easy as pie or a living hell. So this profile can determine all vital traits when looking at someone to hire, including how likely they are to cause friction in a team, how reliable and honest they are, if they're manipulative or not, whether they'll crack under a lot of pressure, how sensitive they are to criticism, if they talk too much or listen well, if they're suited for management, do they avoid conflict, do they care too much what people think of them, how anxious are they, how much do they doubt themselves, whether they'll be self-starting or you have to manage them closely, if they're more suited for repetitive or challenging tasks. This profile is so accurate that we can even tell if they're the type of person that waited until the night before to do their homework in school, or even how moody and up and down they are. Now, most really charming personalities have a really high exterior personality on the profile. And you love these people in an interview. I can tell like right away, looking at a profile, how well you will like them and how easy it would be for them to get a job because everyone's judging people based off interviews, right? So I can look straight away at a profile and I'm like, everyone would love this person. They're going to interview really well and they're going to get snapped up within a week probably. They're charismatic because they show high energy, high communication, high rapport, and they likely know what to say to make people like them and believe them. But such people can have a really low interior personality. And so I'm looking at a graph right now, which of course I cannot show you via audio, where this person has a really high green, which is our exterior personality, and a really low blue, which is their interior personality. And the interior personality has traits such as their tolerance, so their real tolerance of other people, their enthusiasm, their self-control, their self-confidence, and how likely they are to respond to responsibility. For example, I can tell I'm looking at a profile right now, this person has very low responsibility. So if you give this person feedback, it's never going to be their fault. They can't receive criticism, but they will likely claim that they can. So these are the type of people, I'm sure you know them, where they're like, I love criticism and feedback. And then you give it to them and they like complain and can't handle it. So the beauty of having a profile like this is we can see past what you will see in an interview. I'm looking at another profile right now that has a very low green, so very low exterior personality. So this person's not very energetic, they don't communicate very well, and in an interview you're likely not to like them, and yet their interior personality is very high. We had an example last week. We were given 2 candidates from a client to screen. They'd already did all the interviewing and they wanted us to do the personality profile on them. And the one that they were favored towards had a very high exterior personality and a very low interior. And the other candidate had the opposite. And so we said to them, the guy that you want is very likely to be problematic because he can't accept criticism. He has actually very low self-control. He's quite nervous. He's the type that also can create gossip, and we can tell that in this profile. Whereas the other guy didn't interview very well. You probably aren't considering this guy. And yet he's very likely to stay long term. He's very likely to be reliable. And they came back like, oh my God, that's amazing that we could tell from just looking at their profile which one they favored because of the exterior personality that both of them showed in an interview. So people who have a really high interior personality and a really low exterior personality are much more likely to be hardworking, kind, genuine, and tolerant. But the beauty of this is that most people don't want these non-charismatic candidates. Most people go after the charming ones. So this means that such candidates are often cheaper because they're not used to selling themselves in interviews. So this is a side bonus for you. Wouldn't it be nice to know where your candidate falls within each of these traits before you spend countless amounts of money investing in them? Especially when our profile is 89% accurate. So if you'd like to try this profile out for free, you can click the link in the description of this audio. Mistake number 5, you're doing reference checks wrong or not at all. Despite doing the PAC, the Performance Analysis Questionnaire, and the personality profile, 30% of candidates still don't pass our ref checks. It's the factor that makes or breaks a hire. Remember, 78% of people lie during the hiring process. The problem is that most people don't know how to ref check properly, or they don't even bother doing it because they feel it's fruitless, when honestly, normally it is. But when it's done right, it is invaluable and it cannot be missed. I have found fake companies that candidates have made, fake websites, fake ABNs. I caught a reference claiming to be a manager, but discovered it was actually the partner of the candidate. I discovered that the candidate was the most toxic person in the last 3 roles that they were in. I have caught out candidates who claim to be managers and then discover that their direct reports were only colleagues or contractors. And as a result, Talent X has been attacked, threatened, and abused by candidates after catching them out. But we're happy because we get to prevent those bullets hitting our clients. These types of things happened even after the clients loved the candidates and had the best gut feelings about them. So reference checking is without a doubt the most important step of the hiring process. Here's why you likely don't ref check. Number 1, candidates nominate fake people, friends, colleagues, family members to act like their reference. Number 2, you can only check the people they nominate, not other people in their resume. So if they have put someone down who they've only been with for a year, but they skipped the person they were with for 3 years, 2 roles ago, you can't check them. Number 3, you likely don't have a way of getting around the typical feel-good reference check responses. 4, without doing the PAC first, what are you actually checking? You're literally just checking the other previous employers or colleagues' ideas around the person. So the PAC allows you to check tangible outcomes. And so you're not then going to get generic, feel-good, la-di-da responses. 5, because you don't use the Talent X personality profile, you may not ask detailed custom questions about the candidate that you really should check based on their profile. Instead, you're forced to ask general questions that don't give you the full truth about the candidate. 6, I'd also guess that you don't have a way of verifying the titles, names, employment, and contract details of the references to confirm that they're true or not. And 7, you likely also do the ref check yourself as the person who did the candidate interviewing. Bad idea. Anyone who interviews the candidate should not do the ref checking because they end up being biased. You don't really want to know if they aren't good by this point because you've just spent hours or weeks getting this far and you can't fathom restarting the whole hiring process again. So unless you can get around these barriers, your ref checking will be pointless. You may as well close your eyes and pick out a candidate at random and hire them. So we have found ways around this and we use these rules. Talent X ref checking rules. Number 1, send and get signed a reference check agreement that allows you to call unnominated references without violating their privacy or request to not contact select people. 2, repeat the exact same PAC questions that you asked the candidate, but with the reference, without supplying them the answers first. This cross-checking process allows you to know how honest the candidate was and solidifies whether they really sit on the achieving scale. Do they sit at 8, 9, 10? Number 3, cross-reference and verify supplied numbers of the people they claim to be their managers. This allows you to catch them out in any lies. Number 4, check titles, companies, websites, direct reports, ABNs, social media, and third parties. And number 5, anyone doing the ref checks must be a separate person to the one who did the interviews. We stick to our ref checking process so much so that we have retracted candidates we previously put forward only once we've completed their ref checks, when so easily we could have turned a blind eye and invoiced for the job. In essence, we find reasons why our clients should not hire the candidate. We've even gone as far as having to call a candidate who signed the contract that very day to let her know that she didn't pass the ref checks. It was horrible. This part is definitely not the most fun part of the hiring process, but it must be done. The power of accurate reference checking cannot be overstated, and our method unlocks candidate potential by going beyond the norm, seeing through the smoke and mirrors, and unveiling the truth that lies beneath. A friend of mine is in the Special Forces of the Australian Army, and he stated that our process is more diligent and thorough than the checks that he had to go through to get to the second highest security clearance in the Army. I have never seen a more robust process that gives you the confidence you're hiring the right person or the confidence to reject them. Keep in mind, this doesn't need to add much more time. On average, we fill our roles in 5 weeks, so this doesn't actually add more process time to your hiring process. So you need to remove this idea that if I go down this rabbit hole of reference checking, it's costing me more time. It'll cost the company way more to get it wrong. Remember, 30% of people, even after all the screening we do, still don't pass ref checks. If you'd like a copy of our ref check question template, along with more tips and tricks about how to do it, visit the link in the description of this audio. Mistake number 6, you pay recruiters a commission. Now, the purpose of this white paper is not to address the issues that I have with recruiters or the recruitment industry. However, there are some points that I feel are relevant to you as a business owner or leader that could directly affect how you hire. I want to start with the biggest flaw with most recruiters. They get paid a commission based on what you pay the staff member. We charge fixed fees only, and I believe that commissions are a complete conflict of interest. Now, the definition of a conflict of interest is it occurs when an entity or individual becomes unreliable because of a clash between personal or self-serving interests and professional duties or responsibilities. Such a conflict occurs when a company or person has a vested interest, such as money, status, knowledge, relationships, or reputation, which puts into question whether their actions, judgment, or decision-making can be unbiased. So when a recruiter is paid commission, they're actually motivated to increase your payroll. They have a financial incentive to select the candidates who demand higher salaries, even if they're not necessarily the best fit for the job. This can lead to a situation where candidates who are more expensive or who have higher salary expectations are prioritized over equally qualified candidates who may be more affordable for the company. Moreover, the commission-based payment structure can also lead to recruiters pushing candidates to accept job offers, even if they're not the best fit or do not align with the candidate's interest and career goals, solely for the purpose of closing a deal and collecting their commission. This can lead to unbiased and unfair recruitment process, which can ultimately harm both the job seekers and the companies that hire them. Imagine you had an accountant who is paid a commission based on what your overheads are, becoming financially motivated to increase them. How is this not the same? I had a client who wanted to compare my recruitment process with that of his other recruiter. That recruiter had a candidate from their database who had also applied to my job ad. The candidate passed all of my screening, and at the negotiation stage, the candidate said that he would take the role for $120,000. Before I said this to the client, I asked the client what the other recruiter said the candidate's wage was. The recruiter said to him, "If you pay him any less than $145,000, you're devaluing him." When I told the client that the candidate was in fact happy with 13% less than this, my client was shocked. The client was in a hurry to fill the position, and I suspect that the other recruiter may have been aware of this. So it would have been so easy for the recruiter or myself to convince the client to take the candidate at a higher wage, and he would have. He told me he would have paid $145,000. So while I could have convinced the client to offer a higher salary, I, being charged fixed fees, or charging fixed fees, mind you, was not influenced by a commission-based payment structure. So although this isn't all recruiters, unfortunately such incidents are commonplace in the recruitment industry. I believe this has many rippling effects and is a key reason why many industries are seeing exponential rises in wages and salaries. Quote, "Recruiters are more willing than ever to negotiate salary. 68% of companies have increased the average salary offer for candidates in the last year." Well, of course they are. There are definite, genuine rises in wages, don't get me wrong, and a lot of companies can be unrealistic with what they're looking for versus what they're willing to pay candidates. I simply believe that proposing a candidate should be based firstly on their ability to do the job and should have nothing to do with what you should pay them. Recruiter screening process. In addition to the commission issue, recruiters don't necessarily follow a different process from you. They are still plagued by the same issues you are. No streamlined objective hiring method, with each person hiring differently based on some true and weird ideas of who is a good candidate and who is not. To give you an idea, 60% of recruiters say that they look for cultural fit on a resume. How can you know from a resume? 46% of recruiters report that appearance influences hiring decisions during the initial in-person interview, and 72% of recruiters view typos negatively. They are susceptible to the same hiring flaws as everybody else, the same preconceived ideas. Most don't even reference check, or if they do, they don't apply the ref checking rules, and so the process ends up futile. Most recruiters have a basic interview about money and experience and then send you a resume, and then you have to screen them. And the questions they normally ask candidates allow them to sell the candidate to you. Recruiters are salespeople. They're selling candidates to you. Whereas when you have a proper objective process, you can see for yourself whether or not they're valuable and fit the role, and it becomes purely about their ability to do the job. Recruiters don't focus on screening. They don't focus on giving you reasons why you shouldn't hire them. So even with the commission issue aside, recruiters are not immune to the confusions of hiring. I'll mention here that I do not feel all recruiters are useless. There are many recruiters who have placed more people than I have, and it's unfair to, provide a generality across all recruiters. What I urge for is that the business owner demands fixed fees and only fixed fees, and to demand an objective hiring process that is not based on preconceived ideas. I'll also say in fairness that recruitment is very, very hard. And when a recruiter may have 10 jobs with only 5 of them close, you do get an idea of why they're paid so much. Poaching. I'd like to make a note here about poaching. When I say poaching, I mean actively seeking out a candidate already employed and who didn't apply to your job ad. It is my fundamental belief that when you poach a staff member, they're also by default poachable. What's the first question a candidate is going to ask if you approach them? They're going to ask, well, what is the job offering? What are they paying? So off the bat, your main draw card or playing card is money. This gives you those shining, charming candidates who can negotiate, who are self-centric, and if you're lucky, they may also be good at their job. However, unless you put that exact same candidate through this exact same screening, you won't ever know. A poached candidate should still go through the same screening process as any other candidate. I will also say that we do approach people, Talent-X who are currently in a role, but we normally ask them a very simple question. Are you happy in your role? If so, please disregard this next question. If you are not happy, we then ask, would you consider applying for this role? It's an invitation. We're not interested in removing happy staff from other companies. It's just an invitation to look at our job ad. If the candidate replies with questions about pay, we respond with something like, I'm sorry, but we're looking for someone who's mainly motivated by the role and its challenges, not pay. I'm not sure this role is suitable for you. These types of candidates who chase money are perfect for recruiters because they allow the recruiter to put in a better sales pitch to get their jobs filled. So what you're looking for in a candidate is someone who is group-centric. This is someone who loves the role, the challenge, the growth, the company. You don't want someone who is there for pay. That's a self-centric person. They're going to ask you first and foremost and prioritize pay, benefits, hours, what about me? That's not in my job description. And don't get me wrong, you can't expect someone to not care about their pay, but you do want someone who's mainly motivated by the challenge, the role, the responsibility, and the culture. Our candidates often accept roles with lesser pay because they love the role so much, and this partly comes from the ad as well. This isn't always the case, but it is an interesting note. In fact, I would say that probably 80% of the people that we place aren't the most expensive. Isn't that interesting? But poaching is the typical first strategy of a recruiter. Ours is excellent ad writing so that we get the candidates who are looking and who want something more, who read the ad and go, yeah, that's me. And they didn't have to be convinced to leave. So here's the recruiter's process. They have a phone call with you. They search their database. Very rarely do they put out an ad. They screen based off resumes. They do a phone quote interview. They pass on the resume to you, remove all the contact details. You meet with them, you screen them. Money discussions are done with the recruiter, not with you. The recruiter may push their wage up or convince you to hire them for more money, depending on how desperate you are and what they think they can do. You then have to ref check them, and then you get commissions between 15 and 30%. There are 3-month free replacements, but they're hardly ever guaranteed. They only, quote, endeavor to replace them. And if they do you think they're going to give you a really qualifying candidate when they could sell that candidate to someone else? I don't think so. They may not even replace at all. And then they may even reproach the candidate later. Our process goes like this. What are the necessities and preferences of the role? Let's write ads that are specified to those, and we get up to 3 times more applicants. Let's screen all candidates based off their achievements and the value they've added to previous roles through our pack. Let's get them knowledge screened and experience screened, make sure that they fit your necessities. Let's screen them through our personality profile. Let's commence thorough reference checking, and then we do contract negotiation, and we often make back a portion of our fee because we're not motivated by what you pay them. It's fixed fee, not commission. And then we have replacement options up to 12 months. And we have a non-poaching guarantee, which, by the way, I find very embarrassing that I ever have to guarantee that I won't repoach someone that we place, but alas, here we are. I guess what I'm beating the drum for is an accountable recruitment process where the service is objective and where you pay for more than just them alleviating the effort of the hours of work because you guys use the same process. I also plan to maintain this standard in my own business, and I still have a lot to learn, and I'm sure I could learn from other recruiters. I came into this industry frustrated with its biasedness, and it is my personal purpose to spearhead an industry change. The next steps. Where to go to from here? Okay, so you've either listened to this and thought, that was nice, thanks Marnie, but you're happy to keep hiring the way you are or use your same recruiter. That's okay. It's your business, not mine, and you know what's best for you, and I wish you the best. Or you've seen some holes in the way that you hire or how your recruiter hires, and you're intrigued about our process and would like to know more. You can access any of the free resources that I've mentioned by clicking on the link in the description of this audio. I do have a question for you. How much do you compromise on your goals, freedom, profit, and revenue by not being able to attract and hire the right people? Another question, have you ever heard or seen a recruiter claim any hiring success rate based on the same criteria as ours with fixed fees and replacement guarantees? And if you had, was it as high as 75.2% success rate? You don't have time to go and build this process from scratch. It's taken me years, countless terrible hires, mistakes from both first person and second observing all of my clients. Let us help you. Hiring is a hard job, and we technically have about 15 steps to our process without letting it even affect lead times. Even if you did use an agency, you still have to interview yourself, screen yourself, and ref check properly yourself. Our team is trained, and they're specialists in this process, and we'd love the opportunity to prove it to you. Meet with someone from TalentX who can run you through exactly how this process works and connect the dots to see how this can apply to your business and goals. In the meeting, we can explore the issues you face with hiring, roles that you need, how our process works. If you'd like to meet with us, you can email us at info@talentx.com.au, which will come straight to the directors. I wish you all the best with your hiring success.